So hello, good morning everybody and welcome and thanks so much for joining us for today's session. My name is Kay Elliott and I'm the high-end director at Screen Skills, which is the skills body for the UK screen industries. The High-End TV Skills Fund, which I oversee, I have to stand on my tiptoes, sorry, I just realised I'm really little, is here to ensure that we can invest in developing our freelance talent and crews to ensure that, quite simply, you can continue to make great telly by being able to find the crew and the talent that you need. We deliver that all across the UK and all of our investment is made up of industry contributions, so we receive no public money to do this. And quite rightly, that means that all of our industry investment decisions are made by industry via working groups. So we're absolutely owned by the industry and led by the industry. Slides. Just to give you a little bit of a flavour about how we invest our funds. Our investment in new entrant activity, so just to name a couple of programmes, Trainee Finder, which some of you may be aware of, it's a new entrant programme to bring individuals into the industry and provide them with a 12-month placement programme across high-end TV production, also in addition some bespoke training. And this year we're launching a new initiative which is a social inclusion programme called First Break, which is to try and encourage individuals from all sorts of different backgrounds to see that the industry is in fact open to them and for us to give them the tools to enter it. In addition to that, we also support development for freelancers as they advance and progress through their career all the way through. So Make a Move is one of our programmes which essentially is there to support productions to be able to step people up into a more senior role. So it's any role, any grade, and it's there to keep the industry moving and to enable individuals to keep moving forward in their careers. We also target grade shortages. So this year, investing in a number, including location managers, line producers, accountants, coordinators, to name a few. So I'm sure shortages, a lot of you think, oh gosh, yeah, they're really key ones for us. Also, from a freelance point of view, we have a bursary fund, so please do check that out on our website. If there's training that people are looking to do, and that's across all the screen industries, we can essentially provide funding to help people do that, so what's not to love? All of our activity we do through an inclusion lens, so obviously it's incredibly important that we are there to support industry grow and to be diverse. And then outside of that, which kind of leads us on to today, we're there to also support industry develop and implement best practice. So, slides up. So, Screen Skills as a body deliver annual and quarterly and very regular research of the industry to take the temperature, not just in terms of shortages, but also what are the challenges, what are the things that are affecting the industry to be effective. This is one of our recent employer surveys, and as you can see, 44% of the industry that we spoke to said that leadership and management was the biggest skills gap facing the industry today. 44%, I think that's quite amazing. A lot of them felt that ultimately leadership and management skills were often self-taught, lack formality, and as I'm sure you can all attest to, that can lead to it being very costly for production, not just financially, but in time, and fundamentally losing great crew from a production if things can't be resolved, which of course nobody wants. So we were charged by industry through our working groups to devise a leadership and management training programme, which is absolutely bespoke. It's free. We go to the production. We don't, but our brilliant trainers do. And it's there to support, which we'll hear a bit more about today, individuals to have those tools and to learn those HR essentials. So we've supported about 16 productions so far, bit of a drop in the ocean really, across about 200 individuals who've been on those training courses, so definitely more work to do. Productions that have taken it on so far include Sky, Vertigo, ITV here in Scotland, Studio Lambert, New Pictures, 50 Fathoms to name a few. But hopefully that set the scene a bit for today's discussion, and I'll hand over to Pat.
Thank you, Kay. Kay Elliott, Director of High-End TV at Screen Skills, for a presentation that sets the scene for a long overdue discussion. Welcome everybody to How to Be a Better Boss. Now, we work in a brilliant industry, but it's also an industry where many of us have experienced poor leadership and management. As you've just heard and seen, almost half of all people thought that the leadership and management skills gap was the biggest issue facing the industry. So this session is going to explore what could and should be done about that. There's also going to be some audience participation. There's going to be a couple of scenarios where we're going to ask you for what would you do. And just a warning, at the end, we've left some time for just open questions from the floor. If I don't see hands up, I will just point at someone and ask for a question. So you're probably best to have a question ready. So in starting, let me introduce my panel, starting from the right. Frith Tipaldi is an exec producer and founder of Moonaid Pictures. Frith was previously head of production at Tiger Aspect, where she headed up shows such as Peaky Blinders, and now with Moonaid, the new sci-fi drama Intergalactic for Sky. She also chairs one of the high-end TV Skills Fund working groups, and she is the person who instigated the idea for investment in management leadership training based on her own experience in the industry. To Frith's right, we have Adi Orfila. Adi is a freelance line producer and trainer, and as well as delivering training sessions on leadership and management, she's also AD'd and line produced on a number of series such as Hollyoaks and Coronation Street. To Adi's right, we have Alfie Johnson, a production manager who is bringing his own experience of facing the challenge of promotion to a management role, and he decided himself to go on one of these courses, and he can share that experience. And finally, Kay Elliott, as you've already met, the director of high-end TV at Screen Skills. So, ladies and gentlemen, the panel. Okay, we're going to move along at a fair old lick. So, members of the panel, the figures are damning, and so it leads me to ask, what makes a good boss? And I'll start with you, Frith.
For me, it's clarity, I think. I think it's clarity of knowing what the company's doing or production's doing, the clarity of that boss's job and the clarity of your job beneath it. And when I've been part of things that haven't worked well, it's because that things haven't been clear. And for me, clarity is about behaviour. So for me, that's really, really important.
Okay, clarity of roles and expectations.
Yeah,
Adi?
I agree wholeheartedly with Frith. It's also about, someone's got to be a great communicator. And also they have to be fair, treat people fairly, treat people with respect and impartiality, and make sure that people know what's expected of them in their role. We have to, good boss has to manage performance. And I think it's a combination of all these things make a really good boss.
Okay, Alfie?
Yeah, and especially the ability to listen and actually be able to be in the room with someone and hear what they're saying, and then action that as well. And seeing a boss being able to action what you've discussed is, I think, the most important
So not the lack of follow-through, or I thought you were going to do that, but I thought you were going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, Kay, any thoughts?
I would say, yeah, being fair, but also consistent, because I think bosses that move goalposts and you're not quite sure of that, it can be really destabilising. So I think it's really important to be really clear and to be consistent with how you either deal with people or how you instruct things to go forward.
I would add to all of those, human. We're in a people business, and sometimes people just forget the human dimension. So, Frith, you set all of this in motion.
Well,
What sparked it for you?
Well, I chair the craft section of the high-end TV, so it's other heads of production. So producers invest in the fund, and we get to choose where to put that money. But my area it's really big. It's sort of excluding production, all crew. So we have a pot of money and we just didn't quite know how to spend it. So we thought we'd ask the crew. And again, as sort of Kay said, up again, our questions are like, what's stopping you moving up? What don't you like about the industry? What would you like to improve? And the most consistent answer was, my head of department doesn't know how to manage me. I don't get managed. I don't see opportunities, et cetera, et cetera. So we essentially brainstormed what we could do. So, because if you've been in a company, which lots of us are, you do get opportunities to have training in unconscious bias, bullying. If you're lucky, you have an HR department and they look after. That isn't what happens on the floor. And the challenge of high-end television is that the size of our crews have grown. So we used to do dramas, for example, camera team used to be a DP, a focus puller, and a loader, and that used to be it. They now have 2 operators, 2 focus pullers, 2 loaders, 2 DITs. So you suddenly...
Sounds very expensive.
It's very expensive. But you've got someone who you actually are employing because of they're brilliant with actors and lighting and their camera work. You don't employ people, like bosses in no one's job description, and that's the challenge, I think, for our industry. So We brainstormed and we had a session with heads of production because our thinking was if they helped devise this session, and just so everyone knows, it's like 3-4 hours, and they saw the bits that were useful. So together we devised it, but also I thought if they were invested, they would then encourage their productions to participate, because that was always going to be, whilst it was going to be free, you still need the production to carve out a very precious half a day when they are probably desperate to do their jobs. And I think that's part of the challenge. It's sort of, this is now part of their jobs. It's not separate. It makes you better at your job if you are a better manager of a team. That also corresponded with things like the Me Too movement, unconscious bias, big diversity, quite rightly. And what we were seeing, I think, when you manage from a slightly higher perspective, that was perceived to be our issue and not anybody else's. And it's about making sure the floor reflects everything that all the industry is trying to do. It's not just being in a nice festival talking about it. We have to put it into action.
Well, we can do both.
We can do both, yeah.
So I should just point out here that high-end TV really is about the scripted industries, but I mean, people in post-production are taking these courses. I think these courses will work their way into factual, and frankly, people in factual, which includes myself, we need to spend more time on this stuff. So although we're using the language here as scripted, this is an industry issue, so let's all engage. And we're going to engage with the first scenario. Are you ready? We're going to use the old-fashioned put your hands up to one of these 4 answers. So here's the scenario. You've been informed by a member of your staff that they've witnessed bullying of another one of their colleagues, but they've told you in an off-the-record conversation. Also, the person who's been accused of being the bully has become one of your close friends. What should you do as the manager? A, wait for the perceived victim to raise it with you directly. B, call a meeting with both the perceived bully and the perceived victim and address it openly. C, call separate meetings with the perceived bully and the perceived victim and then take it from there, depending what's said. D, do an all-staff meeting to discuss the issue of bullying and encourage people to come forward if they have concerns. Okay, who's for A? Wait for the perceived victim to raise it with you directly. Hands up. No one's for A? Okay. Who's for B? Call a meeting with both parties and address it openly. No one's for B. Okay. Maybe you're going to pick one of these last 2 answers. Who's for C? Call separate meetings with the bullying victim and then take it from there. Okay. And who's for D? Do an all-staff meeting. Okay, that's interesting. The correct answer, we have decided and have been informed, is a combination of C and D. So we have all the experts in the room. Call that separate meeting with them separately to find out what's been said and what's going on and then take it from there. But also, after a while, but not a long while, do an all-staff meeting and put the issue of bullying on the table. Now, I think I've done all of those. I'm not proud to say it, but in 25 years of working in TV, I wish I'd been trained earlier. But I have done all of those, and some of them actually just make things worse, not better. And the problem with D, if you don't do C, is you're not really addressing the issue. You've just put the ball back in the court of the person who's being bullied, and so it's up to you to really bring it to me. In America, it's very interesting. In America, where I worked, there's no such thing as an off-the-record conversation with a manager. And if you told me that you thought someone was being bullied, I would have to tell you that I'm now going to act, and you're sort of a witness whether you want to be or not. And they do that in America to protect the company, not to protect the victim. Just share that with you. Okay, Addy, you have experience both working in production and as a trainer, delivering training in leadership and management. Why do you think there's so much concern about a lack of leadership, and what can you really teach?
Well, the course is, as you heard from Kay, it only takes about 3 or 4 hours tops to actually deliver the course. And I know that's a relatively small amount of time, but what we've found from all the feedback from everyone who's taken part is that we have that classic situation where I go into a production, everyone's under pressure, as you all know from being in the industry, no one's got any time, they all look at you, arms folded, come on then, I've been forced to attend this course, what are you going to tell me? And they all stay on at the end because actually there's something that's touched a nerve somewhere, or they found something useful and they want to discuss it further. I mean, we are not trying to teach everyone literally the A to Z of HR, but we're trying to touch upon the key hotspots, the issues that actually affect all of us in our industry. So things like, how do I manage performance in my team? Long gone are the days where we worked with a crew member for 1 day, 2 days, 1 week. We're not going to work with them next week. We're working on programs that literally run for years, you know? So therefore, it's so important that we manage performance. We give constructive feedback. We get people to actually, you know, if someone's not doing something the way that we perceive is the right way to do it, actually don't be scared of having an honest conversation with them. You know, people don't know if they're not delivering, if no one ever has the balls to actually talk about it. So it's just about empowering people to not be scared of addressing an issue. Also, giving them some kind of like a bit of a toolkit, really. What do I do if someone comes to me and says, I need to talk to you in confidence, I'm really worried about something? You know, you might be a fabulous production designer, but you might not have a clue really how to deal with that. So it's just about kind of arming people so they have a bit of more confidence really to have a two-way conversation with their teams so that actually it breeds a culture of respect in the workplace and enables people to deliver their best without fear of retribution or without fear of, you know, oh gosh, if I do that, someone's going to actually take the mickey out of me. You know, so it's about
Do you
all
find
these
that? Do you
different
find
things.
that people are worried that? I mean, how is the word boss or manager perceived?
Well, it's interesting. I think our heads of department across the board, certainly in the productions that I've worked on and indeed have been training on, seem to be much more engaged with the fact that they're line managers now. But within that, it's a bit of a double-edged sword because that a lot of people have previously thought that means they could just sack someone. Oh, well, they're actually a bit shit. Bye. You know, so therefore, this is about actually making sure that we don't do anything that is actually that people know what is expected and what you can and can't do.
What about the other approach? I mean, there's you're a bit shit, bye. There's also you're a bit shit, go over there, and I'll just keep you in torture for till the end of your contract, but not give you anything meaningful to do.
And it's exactly, Pat, about making sure that our HODs take the right appropriate steps to performance manage and improve someone so that they have got the ability, so long as they're capable of doing the job, to actually change and you know, get better. However, it's also about recruitment, it's about crewing up diversely, effectively, it's about making sure we put the right team together in the first place. So we literally cover right from development through to delivery, kind of what's expected.
Can you do that in 3 to 4 hours?
Yes,
Or is this
it's a romp.
Or is this a taster to get them going?
I'll be quite honest with you, this course could go on for days, but of course we haven't got that luxury of time. So this is like a first step for all our HODs. And what has been really rewarding is we get emails back from people who've been on the course who then say, you know what, I actually was really worried about coming to this, I didn't have time, but I found it really helpful. I had a situation, and they go into scenarios that actually they've had to deal with, and how they've actually felt they were better prepared and they dealt with it differently. So I think
earlier, I think that's also the key, earlier. And so the added advantage as a producer is these are all the heads of department who will also be working together. So rather than things constantly just coming to production, this magical place where everything gets sorted, that hopefully heads of department have then met in a slightly informal, because I should also say that the session's very informal, it's sort of chatty and fun. It's not being taught. You're sort of encouraged to reflect on how you currently work and whether you can and change that. But also then they've got a dialogue with the other heads that they can discuss things.
So in a
nice.
way, it's about building a team.
absolutely.
That's a side plus point to it, definitely.
And learning about yourselves, your strengths and your weaknesses. So for you as the head of a team, you know, we do a whole bit about personality types. It's amazing how many people have never actually heard of kind of NLP and kind of the difference in personalities. And even that can be a light bulb moment for people who are in the course going, oh gosh, now I recognise that person actually perceives that in a different way to how I do. So that might be why we've actually clashed before. So it really it's just a kind of introductory step to try and make a difference and be better at what we do.
Anybody here done their Myers-Briggs? Any other ENFPs in the room? We're the best. Right. It's called The Champion. Okay, we're now going to move on to scenario 2. Here is your second scenario. A makeup artist is working with a lead actor who's made numerous sexist remarks and inappropriate jokes towards the makeup artist. The makeup artist asks the makeup designer for advice, but the makeup designer informs her to ignore it and don't say anything. The makeup artist eventually informs management, i.e. you. What should you do? A, tell the makeup artist it's an unpleasant fact of life in our industry, so she needs to learn to put up with it. B, move the makeup artist to work with somebody else. C, speak off the record to the actor or their agent. D, initiate the official discipline process, including the possible sacking via the producer and then the agent. Who, God forbid, nobody, is for A? Okay, good. Who is for B? One person for B. Might come to you later and pick that up. Who is for C? Speak off the record to the actor and their agent. About a quarter of the room. And who is for D? Initiate the official process. And who can't pick one? Because so there's about 20% who can't pick one at all. I think it's our combined view that the correct response is D. You have to take this stuff seriously. But you do it via the producer and then the agent. Greg Dyke used to talk about the BAFTA bullies. Yeah, the people who could get away with this sort of stuff, but they were bringing in awards and so no one was scared to touch them. But it does create a toxic working environment. So a lot of you are shaking your heads about that. And so in the Q&A, we're going to come back to that and find out why you think D is the wrong answer. And I'm interested in why somebody thought C was the right answer as well. I mean, I'm not saying C is wrong. That can also be part of it, but
Pat, may I
interesting.
interject?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind of thing that we talk about a lot in the fun. You know, this is a major part of the course actually, because we do appreciate completely that it is incredibly difficult, particularly in our industry. You know, our culture is one that sometimes we have turned away and kind of bad behaviour happens and we look the other way. But you know, certainly there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to any of this. But it's about taking you can't turn a blind eye, and I think that's really what this course is about, really, trying to enable us to actually make the right, from a moral obligation, but also we have a duty of care. And if, you know, I think critically, you know, if there are sexist jokes, joking can actually be a form of sexual harassment, which is illegal under the Equality Act. So it's discriminatory. So, you know, again, without wishing to be too heavy-handed, as soon as we have an awareness of something going on like this, we do have to act. And it can be incredibly unpleasant, as some of you may have experienced. I certainly have myself. And so it is difficult. But, you know, some of it may be talking informally as well. You know, most of these, there's not just one answer. It's a combination of different things, and it's about what's appropriate. And it's about acting and making sure that we actually do something to remedy the situation. We all know of actors, and not just actors, crew as well, but, you know, across the board, people have been removed from productions when their behaviour has been less than satisfactory. So the attitudinally, I think we're shifting hugely as an industry, but we have to be strong and actually do the right thing, and it's hard.
It is hard, but when I talked about the American experience, that makeup designer, person would sue the company. I mean, you've seen it with me too. A whole pile of things which were never expressed or expressed and not dealt with came back and became part of those big lawsuits. And that's why they had this absolute thing. As soon as you're aware, you have to act. Okay. Alfie, you are a production manager at Little Island Productions.
Yes.
And you volunteered to go on one of these courses. So
did.
talk us through that.
So I guess it's good to know kind of roughly my background and how I got to this position. I started at Little Island in 2014 as assistant to a producer, Helen Flint. And I worked for 2 years. It was a really busy time. We covered 5 or 6 productions in that year, on the floor and in the office, setting them up from genesis of the idea all the way through to delivery to the commissioner. And it was after those 2 years that the production executive above me moved to become head of production at another company. And so there was this point where we're a very small company, there's only 3 or 4 people there, and Helen, my boss, basically said, you know, what would you like to do? Like, where should we go with this? And we decided that I would step up and I'd have the training, and she would train me to be a production manager and help her set up and run her productions. So for the last 3 years, that's what I've been doing. It's been incredibly intense. The pace has been amazingly fast. And I think that's part of why I wanted to do the course, because when you're on the floor and when you're madly running from one production to the next, there are things that get missed. And like, obviously I'm learning so much in so many different ways, but there were HR processes which I felt like I'd seen on previous productions not being dealt in a certain way, maybe not being dealt with correctly. And I just felt ill-equipped to tackle these things. So when we got the email from head of production saying, oh, there's this opportunity to use it on your productions as well as a refresher at the beginning, I was like, number one, I want that on the beginning of, at the front of all of Little Island's productions. And number two, I need that now. So I'm, completely up to date with the situation.
And what did you learn on the course? What were your biggest takeaways?
Well, it's funny, when you were talking about the personality test that we did, even that in a small way was fascinating, because it made you think about, just pause for a second and think, oh, hold on, there is someone who could be approaching it in a totally different way, this complaint, this issue, and appreciating that when you're approaching it as well is so important. So that was fascinating, and also I think a really good thing for HODs who have been working in the industry for a long time, just to remember that their crew below them may not have the same way of working as them. And, yes, they've chosen them and they may have worked with them before, but there are going to be things that come up where they need to appreciate that they might be different and they might work in a slightly different way, and you need to balance and work with that. Also, the resources that we talked about, when there are issues, when there are complaints, that there are these incredible resources that you can go to, the charities, I think it was the TV charity.
Film and TV charity,
which gives free legal advice. They have a helpline that you can speak to. And you're finding now also commissioners are asking to put phone numbers at the bottom of call sheets, just so there is an open, there's a way of someone to have a discussion outside of the production as well. Just knowing all these things, being able to implement them on productions was brilliant.
So a combination of self-awareness, skills and a tool set.
Yeah, completely.
Brilliant. Okay, we've got some time for questions. So, questions from the floor. Lady at the front here. Yeah, 1 second, wait for the microphone.
No, it's fine. Don't need the microphone.
You will. It's just good for the recording. Any other questions?
Okay,
Come on, as I'm going to point at some people. Lady here and then the lady there.
So how do we monitor that it's actually working? I've just done a production up here, and I sent out a SurveyMonkey questionnaire at the end of the job to deal with exactly these things, to ask people if they felt they could come with complaints. Anyway, I can forward if you're interested.
So how
do we actually assess? Do we really want to know if we're doing it right?
Okay, do you want to answer that while we start the next question?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, frankly, we don't. But what we do know is that actually the feedback we get is that people feel more equipped to deal with issues, and certainly issues have been dealt with, they have felt more appropriately. So, I have, honestly, I can't tell you how many emails I get from different HODs saying, I was on that course, I was really worried it was going to be rubbish, but actually I had a situation where someone came to me and said they had a problem, and I felt so better equipped to deal with it. I think at the moment, this course is gathering momentum. Don't get me wrong, we've been working on it for a long time, but we have only been to about 17 productions. Yeah. So, until the whole of the UK's productions have all been on this course, I think it's quite a difficult thing to say, how is it working? But I think certainly the feedback we've been getting so far is that people are feeling much more able to deal with issues.
And hopefully next year's survey will have a lower number than 44. Question there.
Sometimes we realise we're not the boss or leader we wanted to be, and we notice flaws in ourselves. Have you noticed flaws in yourselves, and have you been able to rectify them? And that's to you as well, Pat.
Right, I'm going to let Frith go first, and if we've got time, Frith.
Yeah, of course. I think what I love about being in this industry is most people we work with are curious, and there's curiosity about the world and working with other people, but and that's really good, but that can and creative people. And I just think I certainly get overwhelmed with what I consider my work, and that's funding programs, managing shows, and I sometimes, forget to create the right amount of time to talk to my team and take time out for myself as well. So for me, it's a time pressure of just sort of remembering what's important. And for me, I want to be able to say hello to my team. And that day that I just walk out the office and forget to go, oh, bye, that's bad. That's bad bossing to me. So I think it's time and managing that.
I think for me, it was about respecting the creative process. I was running a magazine show. Every item had a length. The first thing I would ask when I sat down in the edit is how long it is. How long is this cut that I'm going to look at? And the producer just said, I immediately know you're not watching it for what it's worth. You're watching it to work out how much you've got to cut out of it. So they started hiding the clocks from me, and that's when I realised that my behaviour was affecting their performance. Question here.
It was just with regards to the makeup artist question. I mean, obviously the answer is D, except of course, obviously, people get a reputation for being difficult, especially women of colour, and you can try and hide who it was who made that complaint, but everybody knows. So how do you balance clearly the need to reprimand both the makeup designer and the actor, but the simple fact that that person will find their employment prospects dinted by the fact that they were the one that complained? Because even if everybody knows that's what we should be doing, that's not what's happening. It just isn't happening.
So is there a danger that if you take the lead in addressing these things and everybody else doesn't come with you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole... obviously, people are scared of whistleblowing. Absolutely. Completely get that. However, I think our culture of TV production is shifting. Don't get me wrong, I know it's not far from perfect. We've got a heck of a long way to go. But I do know personally of people who have raised complaints. It has been dealt with. It hasn't been swept under the carpet, and there has been appropriate action taken. Now, I agree, we would also, while this is being investigated, we have to be impartial and fair. So we have to make sure that it's not just, you don't just jump to the side of one person who's made a complaint. You've actually got to go through a whole due diligence. But we have a duty, we also have a legal duty actually. If we don't do something as managers, we're complicit in this behaviour, and therefore it's actually illegal. So we could end up in court ourselves. So there's multiple layers to this, not just protecting every individual in our productions who we want to make sure comes to work, doesn't have to deal with any kind of situation like this, which comes into work, does their best available work and goes home, and actually doesn't feel that they haven't been respected, that they've been, in that situation. So I completely take on board that this is not easy, and that some people are worried they will be scapegoated or blacklisted, for want of a better word. But, there are lots of crew who have had the courage to speak up, and appropriate action has been taken. And I think we just have to hold on to that, and our industry will continue changing so long as we actually continue to do that.
And I would say, one, time's up for all that crap behaviour, and secondly, don't underestimate the impact that Danny Cohen sacking Jeremy Clarkson had, certainly on the factual industry, in terms of BAFTA bastards. And it's a great phrase because it's true. And, we need to consistently now, the biggest issue is inconsistency. One person deals with it and then another doesn't, so then people say, well, why should I deal with it if they didn't? We've got to be consistently sort of dealing with this stuff head on. And
also, sorry to interject, but if your production has got BFI funding, you've had to sign up to the Principles and Guide anyway. So there is a whole zero tolerance, that you've had to sign up to with regard to how your production behaves. So there is comeback. If there are accusations that get taken on, then you may not be eligible for awards. So there is comeback.
I'm afraid we'll run right out of time. So briefly, I'm going to ask Kay, if people want to find out more, what do they do? Where do they go?
Just go onto our website. So essentially, we are running many more of these. They are for productions, but also for freelancers as well. At the moment, our funding is predominantly through our High TV Skills Fund, but we'd love to do it for all parts of the industry. So please do register your interest on our website and sign up.
Okay, so I'd like to thank Screen Skills High End TV for sponsoring this session. And in closing, I'd like a round of applause for the panel, please. Frith, Addy, Kay and Alfie.